Oh, here we go. We're going live.
There we go.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome to our author chat with Paul Gitsham tonight. We've had a few problems getting here, including a change of host because Sam has lost a voice completely. But we'll start off with letting Paul introduce himself and tell us about his books.
Hi guys. Thank you very much for stopping along. Sorry about the delay with the start. Yes, so my name is Paul Gitsham, and I am the author of the D.C.I. Warren Jones series of novels. They are police procedurals set in modern times, so I try to keep up to date with modern policing and forensics, etc. In total, there are now 10 books in the series, 6 full lengths, and four shorter novellas. The full lengths are all available in lovely paperback. This is the latest one, came out in August, and along with an audio book. Kindle version came out in June. So all 10 are on Kindle, but your paperbacks for the full lengths, the rest of which are behind me on my shelf. So that's a very brief introduction. I'm sure we'll get into a bit more as things progress.
Now, the one I read of yours had kind of a lot of the mystery set in a university and a lab.
That would be, as if on cue, upon the last straw. So that was my first book. That was my debut. And you're absolutely right. Yes, it was set in a university. We were talking before we came online. We're both school science teachers. Before I went into that, though, I was a biology researcher working in university, which is where I got the idea for somebody killing off an academic, who, it must be said, was not based on my own PhD supervisor. I saw him last year at his 70th birthday, and I had to remind. I said, no, I always liked my supervisor, but I did have friends who shall we say, their supervisor was a little more difficult, and you could see why they might want to kill them.
So have you used your science background in any of the other novels?
Yeah, generally speaking, I mean, so you can't get away from modern forensics today, and obviously with the amount of true crime on TV and stuff, people are your readers are often very conversant in it. So having that background and understanding and being comfortable reading scientific research does mean I can keep on top of this sort of thing, which is very useful. My hero, Warren Jones, his wife Susan is a secondary school biology teacher, so I could use that, which is quite useful. And peppered throughout the books, I will put in a little bit of science, sort of like, for example, a twist. There's one of the books has them discussing about a person with diabetes and the effects that alcohol would have on them. And I've had other things with effects on particular drugs on a person. So it's not heavy-handed. Here's your science lesson for the day, but it does allow me to bring that in, and sometimes can be quite an interesting plot point.
The series that you're writing is quite long.
Yep.
Do you keep a character Bible to keep all your details for your characters?
I do, kind of. It's perhaps not as detailed as it should be, but I'm getting better. I didn't for the first couple of books, and I then had to go back and kept having to go back to the original manuscripts when I need to know something. Now, pertinent facts I do jot down. I use Microsoft OneNote. I have it open in the background, and I do all my planning on there. So I do now have lists of key facts. Something I've because I tend to plan my books out several in a go, even if I'm not entirely sure what the murder is about or the actual mystery itself. What I have done is I note the significant details about the characters, including things like their ages and stuff. So people who've read a lot of the books will know that Warren's grandfather, who's very elderly, is an ongoing character. So I gave him a date of birth so we could celebrate his 90th birthday. And then a couple of books later, I didn't contradict myself by saying, oh, he's got his 90th birthday coming up. So, I do tricks like that. And I've started making notes more extensively as I go along. It's no Tolkien big map thing or one of those things they did for the Discworld, but it did the details of that hopefully keep me on the straight and narrow. And people on Amazon will let you know if you get it wrong.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. So going back to the science, have you ever been used as a sort of expert helper for anyone else's novels?
No, not for anybody else's novels. I mean, people put a question out on Facebook, and if you think you can help, you go out and help them. I've not done that. Um, However, I did end up teaching a forensic science module at school, because ironically, the module wasn't mine to teach. I was teaching a different strand of this particular A level. But the teacher who was teaching the forensic science module happened to have a timetable clash, which meant that once a fortnight he needed someone to cover a lesson. So they said, "Well, this kind of makes sense. Why don't you do the forensics stuff?" So I took them through how stuff about how they secure crime scenes and things like that. He did a lot of the physics experiments. I didn't do much of that with them, but we went for a lot of the other stuff, and I really enjoyed it. And the kids said they liked it as well. So everyone said, "Well, it's a bit mad. We've got someone here who writes police procedurals. He probably is qualified to teach this part of the module."
Sam asks, have you got a lot written during the last few unusual months?
Yes and no. When it all kicked off back in March, obviously all teachers suddenly found themselves at home trying to teach from home. And as I'm sure you're aware, it is not just a case of sending the kids your PowerPoints that you would normally use in class. You have to rewrite everything. We weren't doing online teaching in face-to-face videos. We was all stuff we were sending them, but still, although I nominally teach 3 days a week, I was probably teaching more, and I was banished to the kitchen. Towards the end of that period, July time, and I started to get a lot better at managing my time and got into the routine of things. Then actually, I started to up my work rate again, and I delivered the book that was due in September the 1st. I delivered it on September the 8th, so I was quite pleased about that. The book for the summer 2022, which is what I'm writing at the moment. Well, in the last 10 days, I've written 30,000 words. So it's that suddenly is I'm now a lot freer to write. I'm not currently teaching them. I'm taking a bit of a sabbatical, so I've not had any problems there over the summer, and this I've written quite well. So yes, up and down, as I believe is probably been the case for everybody.
So how much of a say do you have in your covers and titles?
Right, so the titles are fun. So some titles are mine. I came up with them, and I some occasionally fought their corner. Other times, I'm going to be absolutely honest, and this includes next summer's book. I've got about 10 potential titles. I've sent it to my editor and said, struggling with this one. The beta readers do as well. We know what we want to say, but why don't you have a look at it? And what I find is that the HQ team are very good at coming up with titles. And it's interesting. I was looking through the ones I've got and looking at my covers and the way that the words are on there, and there's a definite rhythm to them. So my titles are not proverbs, but they sound a bit like proverbs and sayings. So we've got The Last Straw. We've got No Smoke Without Fire, Silent as the Grave, A Price to Pay, At First Glance. These are all vaguely based on well-known sayings. Forgive Me Father's an interesting one. I fought for that one. That had been called Forgive Me Father since before I even started writing the book, so I knew what it was going to be about. And they've been a little bit and ahhing about it. Said, well, it might end up people thinking it's just like a religious book. I said, well, read it. And when she sort of read it, went, actually, yes, that works really well. So, and it is about priests who are being found killed. So, Forgive Me, Father made sense. But my first title, The Last Straw, was actually The Straw That Broke the Camel's Back. And there are plenty of literary books with titles that long, but there is no way that is going to fit on a snappy, short, sharp crime novel. So, quite rightly, they said no, and they changed it to The Last Straw. But it kept the essence, which is, I think, the most important thing.
She also asks if you've got a favourite character or relationship that you've created.
Oh, now, I'm very fond of Warren and Susan. So Warren is my DCI, the series named after him. Susan is his wife. Very unusually in the genre, they are happily married. And with Susan being a biology teacher, I can bring that in. And with Warren basically being wish fulfillment, he is very much me. We have some fun with that relationship, and I've really enjoyed writing them. In terms of standalone characters, in my later books, I introduced a new character, a guy called Maury Ruskin, Scottish constable. I've enjoyed writing him. He's quite a different character for me to write, and I'm really quite fond of him. But there's another woman in there, a woman called Rachel Pym, who also joins. And without giving too much away, Rachel is she's the officer in the case, which is basically the person who's in charge of putting all the information to the Holmes computer. Part of this is because she's desk bound. She's I won't go into the reasons why that is. They find out in the book, but she's desk bound. And I thought I don't just have a desk bound character just for the sake of it. So I mean, I checked with the various charities, and it's perfectly legitimate that she would that person in her position would hold this job. What I loved about that is I've decided she is the practical joker. She's the one who's got the who's got the sharp wit, and she's always teasing people, and she got a flair for the dramatic. Um, she's like Columbo. Warren comes in, and he asks her, she gives all this information. Fantastic, it's brilliant, Rachel. He starts to walk away. Oh, one other thing, we found some fingerprints. She loves that. So very, very good fun to write, and I have to say I'm very fond of her.
And while we're on that, we've got another question from Sam. She says she enjoys the workplace banter and the realism of how the team react. Is it difficult to write that?
Nah, I just channeled the science office in school. It's funny. I mean, offices are offices. I mean, yes, these people deal with some pretty grim stuff, and there is an element of that, and they do get upset sometimes with what they see. But actually, you are always going to have people taking the mickey out of each other. You're going to have people cheering each other up. And I thought, well, do you know what? A teaching can be one of those jobs where you have people having really bad days sometimes, and it's a job that has dark humor when some of the kids have done something absolutely outrageous in the classroom, and all you can really do is laugh about it. And I thought, well, it's probably not that different. To put it this way, no police officers ever come to me and said, nope, we wouldn't act like that in our office. So I figure seems to be going right. And like I said, people enjoy it. Sam's not the first person who said that they like the interrelationships.
Jason Kelly wants to know, when did you write your first book?
Oh, right, good question. So I set pen to paper, and one of these days I'm going to look at the precise date. It'll be on the manuscript. The Easter holidays of 2011. And I remember it clearly because I was sitting there doing some horrendous marking, being another colleague. We're the only people in at Easter. And I've been kicking around an idea for a long time. I wanted to write a detective story. Wasn't sure where I was going to go with it. Wasn't sure about the character. That was what's killing me, was the character. But it all kind of fell into place. And I just looked up and I said to the lad opposite me, who was black, and I said, do you want to be in a detective novel? He said, all right. And he appears on the first page. And so I started writing then. And you know what? I suddenly knew what I wanted to write, even though I hadn't got much of a plan. And I wrote that, started at the Easter holidays, and I finished it in September. And I was so excited, I started writing the second one immediately. It just fell into place. So next Easter will be the 10th anniversary of when I set pen to paper, although they never saw the light of day till about 3 years later.
You write quite quickly then, because you've got a few books out.
Yeah, it's a little deceptive. So when I got my first contract in, it would have been back in sort of summer 2013, I got the contract. I'd already got 2.5 books written by that point. And starting in the Easter of 2014, we started bringing them out. And they brought out 4 books that year. It was 3 full lengths, and I'd had an idea for a novella, which they extended my contract on. And then there was a gap because I was a full-time teacher, and it was like, they were like, "What have you got next?" Not a lot. You're going to need some time to write that. So there was a bit of a pause, and then the books started coming out again. Now it's a little deceptive because 4 of them are novellas. Now a lot of work goes into a novella. Don't let anyone tell you different. But there's no getting around the fact that 30,000 words ultimately will be quicker to write than 125,000. So, yes, they came out quicker. Now I'm going to one book a year, one full length a year, because we're pausing the novellas for a bit. So it is deceptive. I mean, I do write fairly quickly, but I haven't been churning them out quite like it's sometimes seen from publication dates.
So teachers are planners to the nth degree when they're at work. Are you a planner when you
Some
write?
yeah, I can see you laughing as well. But actually, I am actually a big planner in work. I have to say, I'm one of these annoying people who knows what he's teaching for the next 6 months. I say annoying until everyone says, "Gitch, what are we teaching this month?" And I can tell them. But in terms of planning the books, yes and no. I plan arcs over several books. I've already said that, I know my key character dates. I know what's going to happen to Warren, Susan, and everybody over the next few books. In terms of the book itself, I initially start with a very brief outline. I mean, it's a couple of ideas, scenes I'd like to see. What I call an Agatha Christie moment. That's the bit where there's seemingly an unbreakable alibi, and actually you break it. You have a couple of those, and then I kind of start going, and I write out of order, and I just write it as it comes, and then I piece it together. Now, if you look at the end of the book at my planning, it looks I've got loads, and basically I'm planning as I go along. Current book, I'm not giving anything away by saying it's going to be a serial killer book, because I've not done one of them for a long while. And that means lots of, obviously, victims, lots of suspects. So this is probably the most organized I've ever been for a book. I have each murder with a separate page of OneNote with the ideas. The timeline can be very important. So I'll be more planned for this one than I would have been normally. And at first it was a bit weird, but I have to admit there is a certain comfort coming to when I'm writing something and just going, hang on, click it, and I've already got those details because I've already looked at that. So who knows? Maybe this is something I should be doing. I exhort everyone on my blog that they should be planning, and I'm a stone cold hypocrite. So
So you said you've got arcs planned over a few books. Do you have an
yes.
end in sight for the series?
Do I have what? Sorry.
Do you have an end in sight for the series?
No, I don't. Warren's aging in real time, which I know some writers have found 20 odd years into their career was perhaps a mistake. Well, if I'm still going in 20 years' time, then it's a nice problem to have. He's 2 or 3 years older than me, and the series itself is running 2 or 3 years behind today's date, which means I've got a couple of years to think about what I'm going to do about COVID, which is nice. But there's actually no end in that sense. He will I go down the Rebus route with him going as a sort of slow kind of semi-retirement with doing stuff outside there, or Bosch, who just come back from retirement, do cold cases. I mean, who knows? Maybe. I went to an event a couple of years back, and there were some genuine cold case detectives there. They'd retired, and then they come straight back and were doing cold cases. So who knows? He could do that. Maybe he'll run as police and crime commissioner. Who knows? So yeah, there is no insight there. I do not see his death or anything like that. It's just going to keep on going until it reaches a natural end, hopefully, or I do. Whichever one comes first.
So we've got a question from Philip Jordan.
Hi, Philip.
Who says, another great interview. He's entered the Crime Writers Association debut dagger in previous years.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever entered before your work became so widely read? And what was the best advice you received on starting out?
No, I never did enter. I just kind of, I was writing sort of science fiction and for years, which never went anywhere, never finished anything. This was the first book I ever finished with The Last Straw, which I think tells you something. I think I'd found what worked for me. Just plug it again. And in terms of best advice I got, well, it sounds like it sounds like I'm plugging my Instagram and Twitter feed, etc. But if you follow me on Instagram and Twitter, I've for the last 6 months I've been putting up some tips. I do it every week. And over the last 4 weeks, I've now transitioned to writing full-length suggestions, which go on my webpage. Like a bit more space. I've got 162 characters, and Kill Your Darlings is possibly the best one, and I've spent the last 4 blog posts looking at that in different ways, and basically everything in a book has to earn its place. It's as simple as that. It's a harsh reality. Go through it, get somebody else to look at it, and if they say it doesn't need to be there, don't just take their word for it, but ask yourself, does it need to be there? There's a whole lot of stuff, like I said in the blog, that tells you what you should be looking for. But the one thing, the one that came out this week is Kill Your Darlings, but bury them in a shallow grave. In other words, don't just delete stuff, copy and paste it into a separate document and store that document, because not only is it less heartbreaking than getting rid of thousands of words, what might be an absolutely beautiful prose just wasn't suitable. It also means that you've got that there as a resource, because that scene may well come up again. It might be useful. It might be the genesis of another story or a subplot. You might cut an entire character, but that's just because the character doesn't fit in this book. Well, that character could come back in another book. So basically, kill your darlings, but bury them in a shallow grave.
So we've discussed your settings and the fact that the one I read had a sort of a lab setting in the university. How do you choose your settings?
That's great. I make them up. Middlesbrough is entirely fictional. So in terms of geography, anyone who lives in Hertfordshire could probably figure out from where I sort of place other towns where it is. So I'm not going to say on town. Basically, it was a boring town that had nothing in it. I lived there, and it was just where I put my head down. So I made Middlesbrough myself, so I can make my own settings within Middlesbrough. In terms of the type of setting, well, the university setting for the first book was just it was just a no-brainer. I was write what you know and all that, particularly for your first book. I'd had years of experience in universities and academia, so I knew what I was writing there. Similarly, a short story, A Deadly Lesson, was set in a secondary school, not based at all on any secondary schools I'd been in, other than geographically. But again, I knew the setup. I know how modern schools work, so I could write a book around that. After that, there's things I've always wanted to do, and Forgive Me, Father opens with a priest being burnt at the local ruined abbey. Now, my partner and I do like a good ruined abbey or a good cathedral, and I really wanted to set something there, and this can be so evocative. I could have done a really creepy one in October if I wanted, a sort of Halloween type one, but I decided to steer clear from that obvious trope. But having the history and being able to research it, it's basically Middlesbrough Abbey, which of course is fictional, is a mishmash of all these different places we visited over the years. And I even had to look at some bona fide history about the Reformation and things like that. So it was that was brilliant. I always wanted to set one there. Other than that, much of the other stuff, Price to Pay, the latest one, was set. The main murder is actually set in a massage parlor, and that idea came about a few Christmases ago when my partner decided to treat us both to a massage. I'd never had one before, and as I lay on my back, with the scented candles and the music and that, relaxing after they finished, I suddenly thought, if someone walked through that door, I can't defend myself. I'm stuffed. And from that grew the idea of somebody being stabbed to death in a massage parlor. And that, what would have perhaps been a short story, I suddenly had some brainwaves about 4 years later, and it turned into a full novel. So, yeah, you never know where it comes from, but yeah, mix it up a bit.
So we've got the upsides of having a fictional town. What's the downsides of it? Because you can't go to the town and go buy my book. It's that.
Well, no, you can't. You can't. That's the thing. I mean, there's no Middlesbrough Waterstones who'll plug me. That's the downside. And there are a lot of people who really, really love going to towns or that who love knowing a city. Oh my God, I know what they're talking about there. So that's the downside. There's no question about that. They do nip out. I mean, they're in North Hertfordshire, right on the. And if you know roughly where it is, basically, it's not that far from Cambridge. So they pop over to Cambridge occasionally, because Hertfordshire, Cambridge, and Bedfordshire are actually their major crime units merged some years ago anyway. So they do pop over. They can go east over to Essex, Saffron Walden, which I know very well, and a few times. So I do. He does go out and about a little bit, and I'm sure there's a little bit of recognition factor there. But even when I go there, to be fair, I do tend to kind of make up streets and stuff, because I don't want what Lee Child has, which is where people will literally be emailing him and saying, no, you cannot go down and turn right on that street, even though it's a town that he's invented. They will still tell him that he's got his geography wrong in a fictional town. And I thought, I don't, try and dodge that.
Sam says you've had a few different jobs. What were they, and what have been your favourites?
Oh, blimey. Right. So, yeah. So basically, I did the usual thing when I was at sixth form. I worked in the Debenhams and stuff. And then I went out and went to university. When I finished university, my first degree, I then went to do a PhD in Manchester. And over that summer, I ended up doing some pretty weird jobs for one of these temping agencies. I ended up all sorts of places. Do you remember that? If you remember the Millennium Straw promotion from McDonald's, which is where you're given a silver straw and it was full of little vouchers, usually for a free Big Mac, but occasionally I think you could win £1 million. If you've ever wondered how those vouchers got inside those straws, that was me at 3 o'clock in the morning using the only machine of its type in the country, which kept on breaking down. That was a weird one. So that wasn't favourite job. But after then, I worked at Barclays Bank for a little while as a temp. We were looking at basically making sure that terrorists don't have bank accounts at Barclays. It was literally a big data mining it. That was a good laugh, actually. The team I was working with were a laugh, but I wouldn't recommend working with Barclays. They weren't very nice. But I suppose most fun, though. I have to say, as a lot of teachers will agree with me in this, some days teaching is the most fun job in the world. Other days it's hell. But a lot of the time it is good fun. I mean, there are times where you just, you get the right sort of class with the right sort of kids doing something they want to do, and it is an absolute hoot. And it really is. And I'm a science teacher, so we get to mess about a bit. We're often telling them kids stuff that's genuinely really interesting. I know everyone thinks about, oh God, science, remember school. But you know what? There's an awful lot of really fun stuff you can bring into a science lesson. And that, it has to be said, is tremendously good fun. So, yeah, probably in terms of proper career jobs, that's probably been the most fun.
Great. You're making me think about mine. She says also asked who are your beta readers.
Oh, right, yeah, I'll keep it close. So my long-suffering girlfriend does the beta reading, as does my father, and for the latest book coming out next year, my mum as well, because my gave it to my girlfriend, give it to my dad. They give it back loads. They found loads of typos and stuff like that. And it's really, really valuable. They do a very good job. And then my mum reads it once it's been published and tells me of all the ones I've missed. So we said, well, put it through your mum this time as well. So it went through Cheryl, and then it went to my dad, and then my mum went with a different coloured pen and went straight through what dad had already seen and added a whole load more. And it was like brilliant. So I don't know. I'll have to wait to see what my editor says, but I think this is probably the most polished manuscript I've ever handed over. And it's been really helpful because they do not only that, they're not just glorified proofreaders. They have some really good suggestions because they now know the characters. And they do say things like, not so sure. My dad, I remember when he was proofreading my second book, I wrote a rather graphic scene. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but basically there's a killer and he's fantasizing about someone that he's killed in quite graphic detail. And my dad spoke to me. He said, "Look," he said, "I'm not a prude." He says, "and I know this is not particularly outrageous for the genre either." He said, "But it's very different to your first book." He says, "And people who read your first book might be a little surprised by how graphic this scene is." And do you know what? He was absolutely right. And I said, so I toned it down. So my books aren't like sort of really prude, sort of cozy, far from it. But there's a tone, and my beta readers understand that, and they will say to me whether. Perhaps, not sure. Doesn't feel like Warren Jones.
So how do you a lot of authors have like mailing lists and book groups and things. What do you do for like marketing and getting your name out?
Right, not nearly as much as I should do. Social media quite a bit. I got onto Instagram a couple of years ago, which annoys me because you can't post links. But I've started posting stuff on Instagram, Twitter, and I've had my own Warren Jones Facebook page for a long while. So if you just go in to Facebook and look and do DCI Warren Jones, you'll get that page. So I share on there, and I've got quite a lot of followers there. And I share stuff to the various groups on Facebook. Mailing list. I have a handful of people on my mailing list, which I only really resurrected last year. I'd had one for a while, and then when I had the sort of gap where I wasn't having any books coming out for a while, I was writing new ones. GDPR kicked in. They deleted all my mailing, all my subscribers, which wasn't a huge number, but yeah, that was annoying that. So I'm just building that up again. So if you go to my website, paulgitsham.com, there's a link to join my newsletter up there. And in fact, I'm going to get a newsletter out actually. There's a few things to sort of talk about. I don't send them out very often. I'm not one of these people who sends a newsletter every week because that annoys me. I'm sure it annoys other people. They come out when there's stuff you want. I think you want to hear about. Which reminds me, if no one's aware of it already, Children in Read, which is basically where loads of authors donate signed copies of books to an auction for children's BBC's Children in Need. It's about 500 authors. Lot 344, that's me. I could do with some support. And you don't get one book, you get all 6. And I will sign them however you want. So I don't think that's a bad price. But yeah, that's the sort of thing I'll stick in my newsletter when it comes out. But mostly, yeah, I tend to be light touch on that. Probably lighter touch than I should be.
So, what did your students think about you being an author?
Well, yeah, it's been a funny old transition. I mean, I didn't say anything about it for the first couple of years. Obviously, there was only a couple of books out, but then word started getting round. I did a 6th form elective where basically Wednesday afternoons the 6th forms could choose to do something, and I managed to persuade the science department to jig my timetable so I was free. And I did creative writing class. And as the head of 6th form said, we actually have a published author here. You really probably, if you're interested, come along. And I really enjoyed that. And obviously that kind of raised my profile a bit. I changed school last year, and in this school is very, very technologically savvy. The kids all have devices and lessons and stuff. And so they just Google their teachers. The moment they arrive, they Google them. And so I've been there about a week before somebody had cast my Amazon page onto the screen. So, is this you, sir? I was like, yes, that's me. There's no denying it. It's got my picture on. And to be honest, most of them are pretty interested. They think it's pretty cool. And when I explain to them, they always, it doesn't take long for them to say, so how much do you earn? And I always deflected that with, well, I have a hobby that pays for itself, which the kids thought was pretty cool, actually. And then when later years, I said, well, I don't earn enough to retire because I've got to teach you lot still. But I'm only here 3 days a week. I get to do 2 days writing. And the kids, again, thought that sounded pretty cool. So generally speaking, they're quite good. Some of them have read them. 1 or 2, I suspect, are behind some rather trollish 1-star reviews, but teenagers are teenagers. And some parents have read them, which is, yeah, that's an interesting one. As you can see them eyeing you up at parents' evening, I'm thinking, yeah, I know you've read the books because your daughter's told me that. But it never comes up. So.
I've never been asked to sign one at a parents' evening.
No, I'm not sure how that would work. I've had a couple. I did find out a kid who brought one in and asked me to sign it, and I taught him for years, and it was really lovely. But yes, I haven't done that yet. It would seem, it does feel a little weird actually. I'm trying to sell something of mine to kids that I teach. Makes me feel slightly uncomfortable. So unless it's for charity in school, I tend not to do anything with that. I'll auction books, whatever. But
Sam says, what do you do to switch off if you get stuck with a scene or idea?
Write something different. I genuinely want to do. In terms, if it's, I mean, if I'm switching off, obviously I have hobbies and stuff. But if it's stuck on a scene, and do you know what? I haven't really done enough today. I need to keep on writing. I just write something different, and that's because I write out sequence. And where back in the days when I was still teaching full time, my writing was crammed into little gaps here and there, and I couldn't afford writer's block. I mean, I just didn't have the time. So by writing something different, if a scene's not behaving itself, I've got to do something different. So that's basically what happens. If I get stuck, do something different. It's only really towards the end of the book when there are very few opportunities for doing something different, and you've got something that just has to be done. That's the only time it's really a problem. Otherwise, just easy. I mean, this book's not causing me any problems so far, but it's a serial killer book. So if I'm having a problem on one, I'll just go and kill somebody else. Lots of options.
She also wants to know if you're going to undertake, and I'm sure she's asked me this just to make me trip over saying it. Are you going to undertake Nanowrimo again this year?
I am not. Well, I say I'm not. So traditionally in Nanowrimo, for those not familiar with it, you write a 50,000 word novella entirely within the month of November. That's 1,667 words a day on average, in case you're interested. Now, I think the original idea was you started writing that book on the 1st of November, and you finished writing that book, or at least 50,000 words into it, on the 30th. Well, I'm already on writing the book. It doesn't time up for me. Will I record my word count on the 1st of November and record it again on the 30th? I may well do that. I might try and see whether this work in progress has progressed by 50,000 words by the end of the month, because that just gives me a little target to keep me on track. And I think these days, they're a bit more relaxed about the rules, if you like. But I won't be doing it specifically now, and it's just a timing issue. I roughly start writing the new book around about the beginning of September, so November's a bit late into the process for me. Works for Lee Child, so he's always 1st of September apparently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sam says she's placed a bid on your books.
Actually, fantastic! I think she's the first.
Excellent prize.
I really need to publicise it more.
We might get a few more bids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's great. I mean, it's children in need, isn't it? It's a great way of earning money. I think it's a lovely idea. I've got a whole load, so I'll just get all 6 out, nice little bundle, send it off wherever. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, because I'm being her voice, some of her favourite questions that she likes to ask. What are your most memorable moments as an author?
Oh, there's the classics, isn't there? There's the old, seeing your book out for the first time. I mean, I was ebook for the first one. It took a little while for him to get around to reissuing his print. So seeing myself in the works, I was on holiday last year, and there was yes, there was the Common Enemy was in the works, and so I'm there doing the obligatory shelfie, with my family who were there on holiday with me taking photographs, and they came over and asked me to sign some. I was just like, wow. I say signed some. They only had 2 copies, but I signed them both, which was lovely, and that's never happened before. A few years ago, and she's probably watching. If you're there, hello, Lindsay. I was at Harrogate Crime Festival, and I got stopped in the tent, and the woman said, "You're an author," and I told her I was, and she recognised, and it was like fantastic. And ever since then, every single Harrogate, we meet up, we have a chat, we're friends on Facebook, and that was just lovely. It was somebody actually, saying who wasn't another author, because we do a lot. Obviously, we go and spend a lot of time socialising with. This was actually somebody stopping me as an individual, thinking you might know who I am. And then going from there, and that was lovely. That was, I'm very approachable.
She also likes to ask how you celebrate each launch day.
We usually go out for a meal. Launch days are always thoughtfully placed, usually in the middle of the week in the busiest term of the year. So going out and having some big elaborate parties just not really going to happen. So we've got a couple of restaurants and pubs that we like, and we'll go there and have a meal. This year, unfortunately, wasn't an option. At first glance, came out the day that that the household was hit with food poisoning, so that kind of ruined the ruined the moment. And then A Price to Pay, that came out. Let's see, that was June the 5th. Oh yes, I'd made a whole load of videos, and yes, yeah, we just had a nice meal. We cooked a nice meal and stuff. So this year, bit muted. It was nice. It was a bit muted, but normally, yeah, favorite pub, have a meal, have a drink, and then get up for work next morning.
And then my favourite author chat question is: would you make a graphic novel of one of your books?
Right. So when you say would I make,
Or would you get someone in to help you?
so basically, yeah, I can't do the drawing because I struggle to draw the curtains. I wouldn't be able to do the actual penning and inking because I have my own font, frankly. However, would I like to collaborate with somebody to do it, and they do all the heavy lifting? Yeah, that'd be a bit of a laugh, actually. Yeah, Anthony Johnson, if you're watching, mate, we should chat. He does a lot of he's got a good history, Anthony Johnson, in comic books as well as novels and films and stuff.
That would be explain the question that Sam put on earlier that says, "Has your handwriting ever improved?"
No, got worse. My handwriting's appalling. It's really hard work when I'm having to write comments on the kids' work. I have to really slow down, which does mean that I can tell kids who are using poor excuses to poor handwriting as an excuse. I can say, "Well, I know where you're coming from because I have it, but let's talk about how you can improve it." So that's quite nice, actually. I think that rather than me just barking, I can't read handwriting. Let's have a chat about how you can improve it. But no, it's got worse. Probably because I never do write these days. I mean, you do everything on a computer. You write your reports on computers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we got rid of tick and flick years ago because it's a waste of time. Just give proper formative feedback, and I'd rather type it because actually I can get more in a smaller space and I can think about it more.
I always tell the kids that I teach that we have to fail a handwriting test to be a teacher.
Yeah. I know it's like being a doctor, and I'm a doctor as well. So I'm on touch too. Not that type of doctor, as I keep on saying to year 7 when they show me something horrible. No, not that type of doctor. But anyway,
Jason says, "Any plans to have your novellas kind of collected into one book?"
not the novellas at the moment. No. I mean, I think it'd be. I think it's one of those things to look at. There are no immediate plans though. But it's a nice idea. I mean, I'm thinking about how long they are, the collective word count. I think they're a little short at the moment. I probably want 1 or 2 more in there. And if I'm going to collect them as one, then I probably need to give some sort of treat as well, some incentive to buy it. So there'd have to be some new stuff. So short term, no. Long term, quite possibly. And they're looking at maybe doing some omnibuses of some of the early books, so we can get people into the series in an easy way. That's possibly going to happen this year. They were talking about it, so yeah. But no, I see where it's coming from. I do like the idea of collecting them together. I have 1 or 2 small short stories I've never done anything with, so maybe who knows.
Any plans for any standalones?
Yes. So I started writing a book last summer, which was set in 2010 and 2020, summer 2020, in fact. And so, yeah, that one's been put on the back burner. It will be revisited. There's 80,000 words of it upstairs. It isn't going to be scrapped, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that at the moment, timing-wise, it's all over the place. So I thought, well, I could just try writing again, just setting it to 2021. And I thought, you know what, I could be really catch a cold on that one if things haven't calmed down. So I thought, you know what, put it back burner for a bit. Don't need to do anything for a while. And what I'll do is perhaps next summer, hopefully when we've got a bit of perspective, I'll decide what I'm going to do. Am I going to move it forward? Am I going to move it back? Am I going to just deal with COVID? I suspect not. I don't think it would work terribly well. I don't know, but yes, that's the current standalone project. I also have ideas for a few other ones that I've done, and I've even bought some books to do some research on, and realised that, you know what, they're going to be out of date by the time I write the book. I won't write that book for at least 3 years. But yeah, I have ideas.
There's a question here from, it just says Facebook user. It says, what authors have been an influence on your writing?
Oh, there's loads. I mean, I mean, and it all depends on how you mean influence. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to read all the Enid Blytons and stuff like that. So I got that love of storytelling and mystery and that. And I'd always wanted. I always thought that the idea of being a writer would be a lovely idea, and fantastic. But it got taken by science, and I had my science career, so it was only ever a hobby. In terms of inspiration, I was really struggling with the character D.C.I. Warren Jones. I knew by the beginning of 2011 that I really wanted to write a detective novel, and I even had an idea for the story, but didn't have as a character. And everything I was reading, these characters, they stood out. There's something unique about them and stuff, and that was really quite stressing me out. I'll be honest. And I literally got to the point, no exaggeration, where my character had one eye and one leg. And Cormoran's strike notwithstanding, and the fact that, yes, he could be in the police just because of disability legislation, he ain't going to be running down corridors and stuff and doing stuff I wanted him to do. And then I remembered D.C. Banks and also Roy Grace. And what I realised was that they were actually fairly normal blokes. And they passed what I call the Friday night test, which is, would you go for a pint with them on a Friday night? And to be honest, the answer is yes. Now, I love Harry Bosch, but I don't really want to go for a pint with him. And I thought, well, I could write that. I can't write alcoholic because I'm not. I can't write bitter divorcee because I'm not. But I can write a reasonably normal bloke who's extremely fussy eater and who has an appalling taste in music. I can write that. And it's almost like I said this I've said to both Peter James and Peter Robinson. I said it's almost like you gave me permission to write the character I wanted to write. So in terms of inspiration, I suppose the strongest one is on that character. And yeah, as people who read the book, well, normal. He is fairly normal bloke. I mean, he is in many ways me, except that he drinks a phenomenal amount of coffee and I don't touch caffeine. But that's the biggest difference. But yes, that was the big inspiration.
So one of our go-to UK CBC questions is, who are your favourite sort of go-to authors? I call them "you shut up and take my money" authors. The ones that you're just going to buy.
Right, let's get going. Right, there's a handful who I will always buy the hardbacks on. I will buy without, it doesn't matter who. Yeah, like I said, shut up and take my money. So Lee Child, and I am looking forward to the Lee Child Andrew Child pairing to see what happens there. I'm going to definitely give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. Michael Connolly, superb. I just think he just, yeah. And I love the TV series as well, the Bosch TV series. And I was reading Michael Connolly the other day, and it just occurred to me, it's like slipping into a warm bath. I've never been to LA, but I feel I have because of his books and just back into that world. Harlan Coben, particularly standalones. I like Myron Bolitar, but his standalones are ingenious and really thoughtful. I just really, really enjoy them. So those three immediately jumped off the top of my head. But if you'd asked me this question in a day, I could probably come up with another three and another three the next day. So I'm quite fortunate. I have a number of authors who I always look out for. But yeah, those three are the ones that sprung to mind immediately. Oh, Karen Slaughter. Sorry. How could I forget Karen Slaughter? Absolutely fantastic. She really is.
Oh, here's a good question. This is a Jason question. Do you write in silence or do you have music in the background? And how long does it take you to decide on character names? Like 3 questions in one.
Oh, the last one. Oh, hey, I'll deal with that one in a minute. Right. It's not so much that I write in silence, it's that I sometimes block the background out. So when I used to write more in libraries and stuff, I would have music on my phone, but it was actually just old songs I was familiar with. It was more blocking out the environment around me. Then I forgot to take my headphones once and found that, funny enough, I'm actually reasonably good at concentrating even in a busy coffee shop. I could zone in. At home at the moment, it's not a problem at all. I don't need anything. So I don't write to a playlist. I know some people do. And I've never noticed that my speed of writing or anything is influenced by what I'm listening to, which I know some writers will put a playlist on for a particular scene because they need that mood. Don't really have that need. I'm not a big music lover, I'll be honest. people don't like me saying that, but I don't tend to listen to much music. So, yeah, it's not something I really need. Now the second question was
how long does it take you to decide on character names?
Character names, yes. Now, I hate it. I loathe it. I love it when you do charity auctions and you get given a name by someone who's pledged 50 quid. It's great. So basically, when I'm writing, I have my file open and I put placeholders in. So the current book has 2 characters in at the moment, NYE_male and NYE_female. Now that will be their name until I drag myself down and come up with some proper names for them. I went to St Albans Cathedral a few weeks ago. It was our first outing since lockdown, and we went to the cathedral, and I took photographs of the memorial in there of the war dead, and I took some photographs of that. And I figured my books are set in Hertfordshire. Now these were the Great War, so these are people. Yeah, these names are 100 years old or so. And I thought, well, those names are probably traditional Hertfordshire names. So if I've got a character whose family have been in the area all the time, that's probably not a bad name to use. So what I do then is I take that name. I don't pair the first name and the surname together because that's disrespectful. I mean, this poor person can be memorialised in a church, so I don't do that. But I use it as my inspiration. Then once I've come up with the pairings, I put them on Facebook, because if loads and loads of people come up on Facebook with that name, then I know it's a pairing that works. I also know that it's not pointing towards one individual, which if it's your serial killer, it might not be the sort of thing they want to have named after them. But if there's 24 people called this, then they can't really claim, you named it after them. That's what I do for sort of Western names. Another blog post, he's plugging himself here, and I'll be doing some more on this in future. If you're writing outside your own ethnicity and names you're not familiar with, then I need to use tools for that. So the last couple of books, I've had some Asian characters, and that's fine. I've got Indian characters. Problem is though, is that there are actually rules and conventions about Indian names, and also and pairings that would raise an eyebrow. So make sure that they come from the same part of India, perhaps. So you're pairing a first name and a surname that would naturally go together. The classic being, you don't pair a traditionally Muslim first name with a Hindu surname. I mean, obviously, mixed couples exist, but it's going to raise eyebrows if you don't explain it. So that's how I name it. But yeah, I'll be honest, it's a chore, not a not a hobby. I mean, I don't know where Maury Ruskin's name came from. It just fell out of my head, and I thought, I like that name, so I kept that. But it's not usually that easy.
So Leslie Lloyd says we'll all volunteer to be characters from the UK CBC.
Well, what? So say again.
Leslie Lloyd says we'll all volunteer to be characters.
Well, with that in mind, then I shall trawl your membership list. It's funny. It's funny to say that I've not actually tried trawling that for surname inspiration. I'm always looking for lists. Yeah, it's as good a place as any. I promise I won't pair first name and surname without permission, because, like I said, I think that can be disrespectful. But certainly, I will be happy to entertain surnames. I just dread the day when someone wins an auction and they've got a surname that's already used in my books, and I can't do it, and I have to say, really sorry, but I can't use that name because I've already used it in 3 books. Not happened yet.
They might be willing to change and have like a maiden name or.
Well, this is it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Negotiation first off. Yeah. I mean, but I'd let the organisers deal with that. Yeah. By the way, it's called Click Sergeants Getting Character. Is what they used to call it. They do it every year, usually around about March time. So next spring, start looking around for that, and it raises a lot of money for kids who've been affected by cancer, either them directly, or quite often for their families, or if they've had family members. Obviously, it's support. It's things like place them to stay and that, and counselling, etc.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's a really good,
Yeah, it's cracking
a really good
character. Yeah.
cause. We've only got a few minutes left.
Ah, time has flown.
Flying by. Give us a reminder of your books and things again. Give us some more plugs.
Right. Okay. So it is the DCI Warren Jones series. They are set in modern day Hertfordshire and they are modern police procedurals. Okay. The first, The Last Straw, set in a university, the brutal murder of a very unpleasant university professor. The second comes through No Smoke Without Fire. This one, nasty, serial rapist. Okay. One of the few times I actually have women being attacked in my books. Bizarrely, I would almost qualify for the Staunch Prize. Not deliberately, just seems to be the way. Silence of the Grave, quite a personal one for this one for Warren, if you're in a bit of his backstory. Common Enemy, far right, racists, murdered. I'm not going to say it was pleasurable, but it was. So we look at all sides of that argument there, and but that was quite hard to write because they're not very pleasant characters and they don't use very nice language. But there are ways around that. Forgive Me, Father. This one, murdered priests. Beautiful setting of a medieval abbey. If you've been around medieval abbeys, hopefully you'll have your own picture in your head, which would be lovely. And then A Price to Pay, which is Murder in a Massage Parlour. With other stories in as well, and some looks at perhaps modern slavery also. If you're a little bit daunted about going in for a 300, what am I talking about here? This is the UK Crime Book Club. You lap up 350-page books. But if you are a bit daunted and want to be a bit shorter, there are 4 novellas as well. If you just want to get a taste for the characters. Obviously, they're shorter. The mysteries are shorter, but actually, I think you get a strong flavour for the characters and the type of writing. So, yeah, dip into those if you wish. And they usually have a little bit at the back excerpts from full lengths as well, so you can have a look that way as well.
And if anyone fancies all 6 signed and dedicated, go to
Yes.
Children in Read.
Children in Read. Yeah.
Knock Sam off of being the second bidder.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go on. Yeah, I'll start bidding.
Go out, bidder. Make us spend a bit more money.
I'll sign it with whatever you want, as long as it's not libelous or likely to lose me any future employment. So I will happily dedicate it to whatever you want. Hey, remember, Christmas is coming, and the auction ends in November. So that's 6 Christmas presents if you win. Just what I'm going to say. And I'm happy to write different people in books if you wish. There you go. If you've got 6 siblings, there you go. I'll write a sibling name in each one of those.
And to finish off, Leslie Lloyd also says she loves Forgive Me, Father.
Oh, fantastic! That's really kind of her to say that. It's really nice when you hear people, outside of your circle, or you get reviews, or you get people telling you that. It does make it all worthwhile because my beta reader's fantastic. They're really critical in that, but they love me, and one of them has to live with me, so they're never going to be too unkind. And it's really nice to hear somebody who I don't know telling me that. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that, Leslie.
And then all that's left to say is thanks for coming on and bearing with us and
No, it's been a blast. I've really enjoyed it.
Technical problems and poorly Sam.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I've really appreciated it, and thanks everybody who's popped in as well. So no, I really appreciate that. So take care, and I shall see you, or perhaps see you around at literary events. Who knows?